If a sea witch ever wanted to possess my voice, I would trade it to her under one of two conditions. One, if I could have a pair of legs like this, and two, if I could become a master of the jazz guitar. For as long as I can remember, I've felt about music roughly the way that a moth feels about a flame. Before I knew a thing about it, I sensed a magic there that I wanted to touch and understand and sculpt and chew on. Piano was my first love. Mostly classical because I wanted to fit in with the kids at school. That introduction hugely shaped my perspective on music. See, the piano is perfectly designed. It takes the 12 possible notes in an octave, arranges them in ascending order from left to right, and then repeats this up and down in a pattern that a child could grasp. There are 2 types of keys set in 2 layers to fit everything under your hand. It even has a nice high-contrast color scheme. So growing up in piano land means believing that there is order to the musical universe. It teaches you a linear relationship between effort and improvement. And while it provides endless realms to explore, it sends you off with a helmet on and packs you a lunch. And when the day is done, there's always a soft bed of velvet hammers to return to, with a thick blanket of strings to tuck you in. It still feels like home to me. But good times create weak men, and after many years of idyllic contentment, the itch of wanderlust creeped into my heart. I began to yearn for strange thrills in dangerous places. I started experimenting with the guitar. Obviously, the guitar is a symbol of rock and rebellion. But for me, Elton and Billy had already shown me how to rock out on the piano, and I didn't really have anything I wanted to rebel against particularly. So what then exactly was it that I saw in the guitar? I saw riddles. I saw paradoxes. I saw chaos. Look at how this thing is designed. This spreadsheet shows how the notes are laid out on a guitar. What kind of sicko makes an instrument out of a spreadsheet? Like any good pusher, the guitar gives you the first few chords for free. But once you get a taste for it, once you start to wonder what the rest of the fretboard is about, you're in for an agonizing road. Look at this spreadsheet again. Notice that you can find the exact same note in up to 5 different places. Finding middle C on the guitar is like trying to hunt the Joker in a house of mirrors. You want to go up in pitch? Just go this way, or this way, or this way, or this way! As if being a 6x23 matrix isn't bad enough, the guitar doesn't even follow a consistent pattern. Every string is an interval of a fourth away from the next string, except one. The only justification for this that I can possibly imagine is as a warning to never get too comfortable with this monstrosity. And to add insult to injury, there are these dots. The piano is the golden ratio. The guitar is a Sudoku puzzle glued onto a Rubik's Cube. The piano wants you to understand it. It's the Helvetica of instruments. The guitar is whatever font the devil writes in. The piano was crafted by Apollo as a gift to Heracles for completing his 12 labors. The guitar was thrown together by Dolos to give Prometheus something to do between bird feedings. The piano lifts your chin and caresses your cheek. The guitar hardens your fingertips and your soul. Naturally, I fell in love. Where playing piano had made me feel that I was the master of my musical destiny, playing the guitar made me wonder whether I was actually a musician at all. There was something exhilarating about that, not the feeling of being bad, but the idea that I might someday conquer that chaos, that I could surprise myself again, that I could learn to do something incomprehensible and thus magical. The guitar had reawakened the hunger that had drawn me to music in the first place. And every bite I got, every lick I learned, every technique I mastered, tasted exquisite.
That's a 10.
I got my first spoonfuls as I learned enough chords on my grandpa's rust-stringed acoustic to rocking chair my way through most of John Denver's Back Home Again. Before long, I had spent 22 mown lawns worth of allowance money buying my older neighbor's black Fender Squier. It had a white pickguard, and the high E string stayed in the nut about a third of the time. He threw in a little amp that made your guitar still sound like it wasn't plugged in, but a little bit more loudly. There was a button on the amp whose sole function was to induce it to make a screaming buzz that drowned out your guitar completely. On that dubious setup, I learned the first few bars of Sweet Child of Mine, and I felt like Napoleon Bonaparte. Over time, I learned to rock a little and I learned to roll a little. I had a couple bands and we played shows that were whatever the opposite of sold out is. My grandpa took me to Guitar Center one day and gave me an advance on 3 years' worth of birthday and Christmas presents to bridge the gap in my savings so that I could buy a nice guitar. A Gibson Les Paul Studio, worn brown, if you're wondering. The music I was playing was, by and large, a lot simpler than the music I had played on the piano. Beethoven, Jack Johnson is not. But because of how tough the guitar was in general, I enjoyed plenty of the sweet savor of accomplishment. I didn't think I had untied the whole Gordian knot, but I had unraveled enough to play Cat's Cradle. In short, I started, like every guitarist who is male and a teenager, to think that I was pretty good. Then some Friday in the oversized auditorium of my high school, I heard a kid with real chops play some honest-to-goodness jazz guitar. His fingers skittered around the fretboard as sounds I didn't understand cascaded out of his amplifier. I must have breathed, but I certainly didn't blink. Surely this was the most unfathomable mystery of them all. To master this, I knew, would be to achieve the purest form of musical power. No, the highest form of musical freedom. For those few minutes, I was Captain Ahab, and the white whale was biting off my leg. It hurt a lot. Somehow, someday, I thought, I would learn to do that.
Teach me.
No.
I picked a bad goal. As it turns out, jazz is the guitar of musical genres. People will tell you that there are no wrong notes in jazz, or even that the wrong notes are what make jazz jazz. This is both slightly true and overwhelmingly, laughably false. The way in which it's true is that master players can justify any note, even ones that shouldn't work, in the context of a broader musical expression, like a chef that can make a great meal that uses an unusual or unpleasant single ingredient. But you and I can't afford not to play good notes. And that is really, really hard to do. Jazz asks you to grapple with some of the most confounding harmonic complexities that mankind has yet discovered. But also, it wants you to deploy them on the spot. To try to do this on guitar, the spreadsheet of instruments is certifiable madness. And in fact, it has been scientifically proven to be completely impossible. Our brains are just too small. But a goal is a goal, and unfortunately, I wrote mine down in a little leather notebook. Word to the wise, writing down a goal is as big a mistake as naming a lobster that you intend to cook and eat. Years later, you're still buying food pellets for little Jennifer Clarence, and I'm still trying to become a, quote, exceptional jazz guitarist. So I do what anyone with a goal does. I watch a lot of YouTube. There are so many free resources out there that one can get, and I have gotten, hopelessly lost in the rabbit hole repeatedly. 10 weird tricks to unlock your inner guitar hero. Click. Neo-soul craziness? Lick tutorial. Click. How to phrase bebop lines like Wes Montgomery. Click. The problem is that these videos aren't always good for your self-esteem. Watch as 9-year-old prodigy Benny Littleface shreds over giant steps. Click. Try not to feel insecure as you watch this guitar compilation. Click. When was the last time you felt like you actually improved a guitar? Click. How to feel good about yourself when you're playing guitar by thinking about something else you're good at instead. Click. Why you just don't have what it takes to achieve your dreams. Click. Barney Kessel, jazz guitar improvisation, chord melody style. Pause. We need to talk about this one. It's guys like Barney Kessel that give me a complex. If you know this dude, then you know. But if you don't, Barney Kessel is a jazz guitar legend. This guy could play the guitar just like a ring in a bell. He was a pioneer of chord melody technique, which basically involves playing the rhythm and the lead guitars at the same time. Normally, you need two guys for that. Looking at you, John and George. In addition to releasing many classic records as a band leader, Barney Kessel was an extremely prolific studio musician. While writing this, I had my mind blown when I looked him up and learned that he was a session musician on the Beach Boys' iconic Wouldn't It Be Nice track. Barney's was a talent so beautiful that it can only be despised. When asked what the hardest part of contributing to a Bible's worth of classics across multiple genres was, he said, "Finding parking by the studio." Folks, that quote doesn't live rent-free in my head. I pay rent to that quote. Let's zoom in on that video of Barney's I mentioned before. It's an old VHS lesson that's been bootlegged online. If you are a musician or a guitarist, fair warning, this video will break you. To salvage our collective egos, I'm going to focus not on his guitar playing, but on how bad he was at teaching. Let me walk you through some highlights. The video opens with a clip of Barney jamming. He's accompanied by a bass guitarist and what is either an artifact of a conversion from low-quality VHS to digital, or a tiny mouse just absolutely wailing on a rodent-sized piccolo. Since I assume it's the latter, I'll point out the remarkable fact that even after the jam, the mouse continues to hold his note at right around 7,870 Hertz for the duration of the video. Truly a stunning feat of circular breathing. My apologies, Ian Andersnout, but we're going to EQ you out of this to make this tolerable. Back to the jam. It is hot. Barney is playing chords at lightning speed up and down the neck. Oh boy, I can't wait for him to teach me how to do that. A couple minutes in, Barney promises us that his lesson will be, quote,
really not difficult.
Big if true. The lesson proceeds with Barney introducing us to a few different basic intervals, or the distance between notes. He plays each, this is a major third, this is a minor third, this is a major sixth, etc.
That's major and minor thirds. Now here's sixth. Now that sounds more open. There's a greater interval between those two parts.
Then he says,
Now, I want you to not only hear these things, and remember what they sound like, but remember what they're called. Quite often you will hear these things, and if you hear them in your mind or you hear someone playing them, you'll now know what they're called, and you'll have them in your mind and in your imagination to use when you're deciding how you're going to harmonize a treatment.
Okay, hold on. This is very much a draw the rest of the owl moment. Raise your hand if you remember how these sound. Now, if you're a musician with years of ear training already, put your hand down. And if you have perfect pitch, punch yourself in the face. Any hands still up? That's what I thought. So then Barney says, okay, we're finally going to go into three-part harmony. Finally. I honestly feel bad for him that he had to spend an entire 8 minutes getting us chowderheads up to speed on all of the different intervals. So he plays a few example chords and says,
and that has its own sound, and when you hear this from now on, you can just remember that they're triads and it's called three-part harmony.
This is a bona fide pedagogical miracle, folks. What might take your college theory instructor a semester to explain, Barney manages to teach in the span of just 28 seconds. Barney then repeats the miracle with 4, 5, and then 6-part harmony. I mean, I'll speak for myself, but once you've heard one 6-note chord, you've pretty much heard them all, right? Just remember how it sounds and use it in your music. Barney has a key insight here for us as well. Jazz guitar is actually really
a lot of fun and easy to do. It's easier than you think, because all you have to do is learn how to do these things, catalog them in the sound, catalog the sound in your mind, know what to call them, and then use them freely.
Freely.
Freely, 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 freely.
Freely, freely. It's just that easy, folks. All you have to do is just hear it, remember it, and use it. Honestly, I don't know why people are spending so much money on lessons and spending all these hours practicing and, frankly, even watching YouTube videos like this. Just pick up a guitar, learn what chords sound like, and then use them. Barney explains this with the innocence of a 9-year-old Beth Harmon asking why you made that move when it leads to checkmate 5 moves later. And it is equally awe-inspiring and devastating. Maybe my favorite moment is when Barney steps back and talks about his own journey as a musician.
For me,
He says,
it's been a great discovery and a lot of fun. And this is the way I make my music. I decide what I'm going to play as a melody, and then I decide what I want to do with it as the harmonic treatment.
this is how he makes his music, folks. Find you a sea witch and ask her to let you make music this way yourself. Because I can tell you this for certain. The one thing Barney Kessel does not know is how to teach you to play music like Barney Kessel. And if he can't, who can? When I watch that video of Barney Kessel, I can't help but reflect on the tortuous journey that led up to this moment for me. Starting out on an instrument that made sense to me, only to leap off the high dive into one that truly didn't and still largely doesn't. Barely pausing to adjust to the pressure before kicking my flippers towards the sun and pushing to deeper and deeper waters of jazz, with all its theory and complexity. Those were choices that I made because I wanted novelty and freedom, because I wanted a new challenge with a pinch of chaos, and because I was having a good time. But to watch Barney Kessel's dazzling abilities is to feel like you are lost in the Mariana Trench, and to realize through his abominable teaching that the only way to become like Barney Kessel might very well be to be born as Barney Kessel is to see your oxygen light flashing. It's to hear a voice in your head that asks, will you ever cross that goal off in your notebook? I have 4 answers to that question. Answer 1, no. Unless there's a sea witch in this trench, I am not going to ever be able to approach the kind of brilliance of the guitarists that I most desperately admire. People like Barney Kessel, or Adrian Moniard, or Julien Lage, or Antoine Boyer, or even the average YouTube 12-year-old. Of course, these people have worked hard to summit Mount Genius, but they were born in a village at its base, and I have to save up for a ticket to fly there, and if I ever do buy that ticket, I'll be flying coach, and I will get stopped at customs because I accidentally put fruit in my bag. Answer 2, maybe. Maybe if I keep practicing, if I keep blowing at this goal with my horn, its parapets will eventually crumble. Barney famously kept 16+ hour practice days, after all. And maybe there are teachers who can help me. Teachers whose gift for teaching is as pure as Barney's gift for his instrument, or even as profound as his lack of parking ability. Maybe Barney's video is simply a reminder that great teaching is its own kind of genius, and that I just need to start looking for that in the right places. Answer 3. Yes. If Pinterest quotes have taught me anything, it's that I'm not competing with anybody but myself. And while the rest of the world might not think that I'm good enough to be able to check that box, I also don't think that I'm good enough to be able to check that box. Wait, no. The point is, there's one person who might check that box. And that's the kid that I was in high school, breaking his own heart at the thought of someday being able to play major and minor 7th chords. You can go ahead and check that box, buddy. You've earned it. Answer 4. No. Because if I ever got close, I'd just move the goalposts again. If the guitar is a beautiful puzzle, then maybe being unsolvable is a feature, not a bug. Maybe you're not supposed to catch Moby Dick. Maybe the real Moby Dick is the friends you made along the way. At any given moment on any given day, I will tell you any one of these answers with perfect confidence. For example, guess which answer I'll give you if I just watched that Barney Kessel video?
Really not difficult.
That is to say, I have no idea if 1, 2, all, or none of those answers is true. But figuring that out is not just an academic exercise for me. It has surprisingly high stakes. It informs how I approach the entire enterprise. Is learning the guitar a goal, such that I should be pushing myself forward and holding myself accountable for measurable markers of progress? Or is it a passion whose value is coextensive with its ability to make me happy in any given moment? What is my relationship to this instrument? Is it a joy or a frustration? Is it a friend or a foe? Most critically, is it all worth it? Or is it just a particularly flashy commode in which to flush my effort, time, and money? Clearly, these are issues that I need to resolve before I swim any deeper into the guitar's dark waters. Which reminds me of a song, actually. Let's see. But getting back to my point, I should definitely think about that pretty hard. I'm definitely going to think about that. I think I'll probably just play for a little bit first, though. Just for a minute. We can all agree that Barney Kessel could have been a much better teacher if he had just cut down on all the fluff, for crying out loud. Seeing a gap in the market, I've decided to throw my own video lesson course in the ring with all the 22-year-old YouTube guitar instructors who want my money. I've decided to give you the entire course for free, right here and now. It's done in the style of Barney Kessel, but with all the fat trimmed. Here it is. If you like it, please like it, subscribe, hit the notification bell, write a comment, send me a DM, check out my Twitter and my SoundCloud and my YouTube channel, and like, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell. Without further ado, this is a guitar. It's quite easy. Each string can play many different notes. Here's what some of them sound like. Remember these notes. Then, once you've done that, try playing them in combinations like this. And that's how I make my music. I'm also developing a few more lessons in different subjects. For instance, structural engineering. Some designs aren't going to hold very much weight. Use your eyes to tell which ones and avoid them. Medicine. Medical science is actually much easier than you think. You just have to know what it is that's afflicting the patient, and then give them chemicals that treat their problem. And drums.
And I'm gonna explain to you by playing it all. Ooh.